that. They're popping in. I just realized I can't see my script for but I'll bring it. It's okay.
You can ad lib. You'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're just going to give it a couple minutes. It takes a little bit for everyone to get in. I have to keep admitting. All right, I think we'll get started and we can kind of let people in as we go here, but welcome, and we're excited to have you today. We do have our topic, I guess, is how to train your AI on your brand. A little bit of housekeeping right at the beginning, just to kind of show you where we are to kind of look and see. So obviously right now you can see my screen and the slides. At the top of the screen, there is a little button for Q&A. So if you have a question throughout, feel free to enter your question into that Q&A. You can also chat if that's a little bit easier for you. We'll be monitoring both of those as we go throughout. So that will be helpful. A little bit on, whoops. On our agenda, we're going to do some welcome introductions to get us kicked off. Katie's going to then kind of jump into her presentation, and then we'll have Q&A at the end and any closing remarks that we have. So the University of St. Thomas is inspired by the Catholic intellectual tradition. The university educates students to be morally responsible leaders who think critically, act wisely, and work skillfully to advance the common good. We have 3 different campuses, one in Minneapolis, one in St. Paul, and one in Rome. That we have over 10,000 undergraduate and graduate level students that kind of cross over into 8 different schools within the university. At St. Thomas Executive Education, we really are focused on connecting the companies and individuals with the skills that they need to succeed. In this case today, we're talking about how to train AI on your brand, but we offer many different programs in an open enrollment format where we have like a mini MBA, project management, we have an AI for professionals, as well as digital marketing and a certified digital marketing professional program. On the custom side, so you can customize we work with a lot of different organizations to customize learning solutions for their teams. So we might have, you might take something that we teach, like AI for professionals class, and bring that into your organization, but we can also customize it to your needs. So if you're looking at wanting to train leaders in AI specifically, if you want to, train a group of individuals on project management for those tools, we can customize those trainings for what your needs are. So those are the different formats. So our introductions today. So I am Lindsay Lowe. I'm the Senior Director of Executive Education. We might also have our Program Manager, Abby Welly, who will be just helping to kind of navigate the chat and Q&A during the webinar. And then we have with us today as our speaker, Katie Berry. She is adjunct faculty at the Opus College of Business. She also is really focused and has started to learn a lot more and dig into AI as a way to sort of help in her marketing content creation and other pieces of that. She's worked everywhere from, I think, small business all the way up through corporate. So she has a lot of experience in a wide range of companies. So she's really the perfect person to train us today on how to train our AI on our brand. So with that, Katie, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Lindsay. And thanks everybody for sharing a little bit of your time today. I know that time is of the essence for everybody, and AI is kind of so really excited to jump right in. I'm just going to jump into my slides, but before I do, Lindsay, can you just confirm that you can see this slide? Yep, you can see. Yep. Perfect, perfect. That's always the age-old question. So how to train your brain on AI. I think I just said how to train your brain on AI. I guess that was sort of a slip. I meant how to train your brand. But the truth is really, it is how to train your brain, right? We're all kind of learning. So just about me, I am a small business owner. I own a chiropractic clinic with my husband. So due to client confidentiality, a lot of the examples are going to be from my own business today because I don't want to use things from my other clients. I also partner with an agency to create US Bank's first AI-driven campaign in 2024. As Lindsay said, I'm a professor, an adjunct professor of marketing, also teaching AI at the University of St. Thomas. But probably the most important thing about me right now is that I'm constantly learning as AI changes daily, sometimes hourly. So really excited for our Q&A portion as well, but just want to be very transparent that there are things that I don't know, and I will own that. And my response to that is I will find out and get back to you. So we're going to dive into 3 tools today. I'm going to demo those 3 tools because we just have a half hour, but there's a lot of tools out there. And I want to just kind of set a little bit of a framework before we dive in. So setting that stage, not going to ask for a show of hands, but if you just think about this, how many of you use AI in your work? Probably a great many of you use AI in your work. I wouldn't be surprised if it's close to 90 or 95% of the people on this call. But the second question perhaps is more important. How many of you have trained an AI tool on your brand, right? So I'm guessing that there's probably fewer, maybe more than 50%, but probably less than 75% have actually trained that AI, right? And why are we all here today? This was from McKinsey from last year, showing that adoption of generative AI from 2023 to 2024 grew over 30%. And I bet that I tried to find that same data for this year. McKinsey's report released in July of this year did not include this question. But I would bet that number once again jumped up probably by like 20, 25%. So over 2 years, we're looking at an almost 50% jump in the number of people in their organizations using AI. And then when it comes to generative AI, those types of content generated, I bet many of you are familiar with text. That's certainly kind of the easiest and the most common one. Images is second, computer code. I actually love drafting emails now and getting that computer code and being able just to share that over with MailChimp and say, all right, here's my perfect formatted email, video, voice, and music. So you can see, I bet a lot of that's going to grow as well. And then this is honestly probably to me one of the most important kind of takeaways from all of today is just this trust but verify, right? And so trust by verifying, that 80-20% rule, right? AI can get you 80% of the way, but spend some of that time that you've saved taking work to that last 20%, right? So this was from last year. McKinsey asked respondents, how often are you actually QAing this, reviewing those Gen AI outputs to say that they're on point, that they're accurate, that they reflect your brand. And what's really, really interesting is a share of outputs being reviewed. The percentage of people saying all of the time is over a quarter, right? Which is amazing. But the people saying up to 20% of the time, which could include none of the time or 5% of the time, was equally as wide. So I think in general, trust but verify, right? Make sure that those outputs are accurate. When I use a chat GPT and they pull an answer, I will always go out to those website links just to say, oh, okay, if they're quoting something from Gartner, right, or from Forrester, or from McKinsey, or from an article in the Star Tribune, I want to go out and actually look at that article to make sure that I didn't get, AI slop or an AI hallucination. So just always bear that kind of in the back of your mind. And then why it matters, right? Untrained AI will guess your brand tone of voice, right? So AIs can kind of appear robotic, right? We've all seen things. I think a lot of us have probably even seen maybe posts written on LinkedIn or blog posts in the last couple months where you're like, this just doesn't sound like the person that I used to know, right? Or this doesn't read like that brand that I'm familiar with. So it could appear robotic, stilted, lacking that company's defined tone of voice. Equally as important, missing those brand key values, right? If they're very optimistic or hopeful, or if they're serious, or if suddenly a brand that was a little bit funny but never snarky suddenly sounds snarky, right? So it can miss that. It can also really just miss those proof points, right? Or those reasons to believe. If you haven't trained your AI on what are the most compelling reasons that somebody chooses your brand, believes in you, would recommend you to other people, not including those, the AI tool's not going to recognize that. And then most importantly for all of us, it just wastes time, right? Training your brand up front will then save you so much time in the background, right? So without training those AI tools, you might go through many rounds of prompts. They might not be accurate. This was an example from my personal life. I was trying to design a book cover for somebody, and it was a fantasy book, and so you can see on the left, it was a young girl, and she just didn't quite hit the right tone. But I just said make her more visually striking, right? I had not trained the AI on this book or what it was about, and then it kind of looks like a Tim Burton nightmare character, right? So I wanted her to be more striking. I didn't want her to look like kind of like a horror movie character. And then also I will say too that I then said, well, this is a book set in the Victorian era, and then it gave me an image with cars, right? And I showed it to the author, and she's like, well, they didn't have cars in the Victorian era, right? So even just things like that, right? Always kind of trust but verify. And so I just want to kind of, before we get into the meat of this training your brand on AI, the most important thing that you really have to figure out is what is your brand voice, right? So Nielsen Norman Group has 4 dimensions, right? Funny, formal, respectful, and enthusiastic. And before you can start really training your brand, it's really important that you understand kind of what are those brand guidelines, or what is that tone of voice? And there's certainly, you know, half-day long seminars that your team could have just around this topic, right? Take AI out of the equation and just take this. But what I really like is actually, I found a custom chat GPT that can help you with this. And I'm going to put all these links into the chat. But this was just called a GPT for brand tone of voice guidelines. So we're going to get into how to make your own custom chat GPTs later. But really just saying, okay, so say I'm a new campground an hour from the Twin Cities, attracting retirees and families. Give me a brand tone of voice to promote myself. And so obviously this is like the easiest, lowest level that you may look for. But if you really just don't have a tone of voice, right? You don't even know where to start. A GPT like this is a great place to start, right? Your brand personality, your tone of voice attributes, do's and don'ts, right? Some sample messaging, right? I like that. Camp close to the city, it's miles from the rush, right? They even know if you grew up outside of the Twin Cities, you actually call it like the cities, right? So I think then what you could do with this is then iterate, right? So you could iterate this, get a really good brand tone of voice, and then actually then do a printable, or not printable, but get a file for yourself. So I thought that this GPT that anybody could use was really, really helpful. This is just a simple kind of 2-second overview of that. But if you really just had nowhere to go, you had never done something like that, you could say, okay, here's a place for me to start, right? So it's like, I'm not starting from scratch. And I will say, as a small business owner who had to come up with the name of a business, a slogan of a business, a logo of a business, what are our colors? You know, I really wish that I'd had something like this 5 years ago when we started, because at least you have a starting point, right? So there are plenty of agencies in town. There are plenty of agencies all across the country that can do this. You can have a brand manager, or your CMO could do this. But also, gosh, just use this chat GPT, right? At least you have a place to start. And so really that's kind of the intention of this slide 6 is, okay, before you can start training your brand, you have to understand what your brand tone of voice is. And at least with that chat GPT, that custom GPT, you could do that. Or you could even just do an exercise in a room, right, with your team. What is it that our brand really stands for and represents? And you'll understand in a second why that's so important. So do's of AI brand training, right? This is where we're moving right along, right? Train with your brand guidelines. So if you don't have any brand guidelines, you can make them up. You could use that custom GPT, right? But what really feels right? Now, the gold standard. So say that you were a very large company with a ton of resources that really had firm brand guidelines. Then you would provide sample copy, tone of voice documentation, approved phrases, right? You would upload your logo, your color. You would upload your brand library library of photos, right? You would upload all of that stuff. And if you are in that situation where you are working with a large company, this is absolutely what you should be doing, right? You should upload all of that information, and I'll show you where to do that. But I'm aware that not everybody on the call today has that level of sophistication, and that's not an insult, right? I'm a small business owner. I do not have this level of sophistication. I don't have a brand library for the chiropractic clinic that I own. So in that case, you're going to have to get a little bit more creative, right? Using that GPT, maintaining tone across channel, implementing that brand voice Q&A, right? Everything that you check and that you create should be checked with a human, but you can also check it with that AI tool. This actually, number 5, is actually my favorite thing, generating first drafts, right? So that 80-20 rule. I do a ton of blog posts now. I'm going to demonstrate at Jasper AI, but I love doing that first draft and then taking that offline, getting a little bit more my hands on it, and then really making it what I want, and then putting it live, right? So generating first drafts, I think that they do a really great job. And then localizing that brand voice, right? So if you are a multinational company, this is a great opportunity for you. I will say that Pods, the moving company, they did this with Gemini, where they actually had kind of like localized billboards that went through 29 neighborhoods in New York City, and they customized in real time all of these different messages based on kind of what they knew about the location and kind of the culture and the vibe of those locations. And they ended up overall actually creating over 10,000 messages in 29 hours. So I think that's a perfect example, right, of kind of AI can also kind of localize that brand voice, which even, as we know in the US or even in the Twin Cities, right, there's different areas and kind of different inside jokes. So those are kind of some of the do's. And then just some don'ts, right? Don't assume that AI gets your voice right? Obviously, these pictures are super silly, but AI generated content can be really generic or off-brand, right? So without those clear inputs, without giving you some sample copy, that can definitely happen. This one, I personally feel really strongly about. Don't use AI at this moment in time for sensitive messaging, right? If you have really high stakes messaging, that's a time where you roll up your sleeves and have your best human writers do it, right? They're going to understand the nuance and the audience emotion, right? Whether that's delivering bad news to your internal team, a large internal team that's going to impact everybody, such as a layoff, whether it is something that could impact, your stakeholders. This is something where at this point, I really feel like AI still doesn't replicate the human heart. And so when you do have those sensitive messages, take a minute and say, maybe this is one that we should just bring. We used to call it in-house, right? Agency versus corporation. Maybe this is one we should bring kind of in heart, if you will, right? Bring it into people. Don't let AI replace that brand storytelling, right? Let it support it, not replace it. Humans, although I said have an assist from AI, you still want to say kind of what is the heart of that mission? What is that voice, right? So I call it kind of do it together. Have AI do it with you, but don't just have AI replace that, right? Because brand storytelling, it really does come from human heart. Don't ignore those cultural nuances. And then obviously don't treat your brand voice as fixed. So one of the things I really like is that you can always be retraining, right? Updating that brand voice guide, retraining the AI models with fresh examples to evolve with your audience. So just like you continually train your employees, I consider these AI tools that you're training the tools for the future, right? So you're going to give them things, and as you get new updates and you get new content and new creative, you're always going to be uploading it. You're always going to be retraining it. And then just a couple tools, and then I'm going to take a quick break to see if we have any questions, and then I'm going to demo a couple. So popular tools, right? ChatGPT, that is, I would say, the most common one used worldwide today. So we're going to focus quite a bit on that. So creating custom GPTs, we'll show you how to do that. HubSpot, Breeze, Writer, Jasper AI. Jasper AI to me is probably one of kind of the gold standard tools used right now. I will also say that it is really darn expensive. So if that's something that doesn't work for your budget, that's something to think about. Contently, Grammarly Business. And then I'll note, if you just say, hey, you know what, as part of my employee development plan or my professional development plan, I just want to play around and get to know some tools, right? Just some trial and error. Most tools do have a 7 or 30-day free trial, but those individual and corporate accounts can really vary. So I've included individual pricing as it was of August 5th, 2025, but that could change tomorrow, right? So just bear that in mind. If you just want to get to know some and play some, I encourage you to go out there. And then just a couple real world examples. Spotify did a great job. They trained AI to generate those personalized playlist descriptions, which kind of have that musical expertise, but also that friendly conversational tone. So just like you would do when you're training your AI, they did the same darn thing. They fed thousands of human written playlist descriptions into their AI system and created those clear tone guidelines, right? So the biggest way that we can train our AI systems today is to train it with all of the human written stuff that we've written today, right? Airbnb, B, consistent listings, using it to preserve that warm, inclusive brand tone of voice. Again, a custom model trained on their highest performing listing descriptions and brand guidelines. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? Your brand guidelines as well as what's performing the best for you. And then Microsoft did the same thing, right? They did an AI brand consistency checker. Obviously, Microsoft has so many different business lines and so many different products. So they developed that checker that developed the sense of, okay, if we're going to use AI, is it on brand? Which was really powerful for them. So let's get into it. I'm going to take a quick pause. Are there any, Lindsay, are there any immediate questions that people have? Melissa, yeah, I love the Spotify DJ feature. Yeah, I think it's great. Any questions before we jump into some of the tools?
None so far. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first tool is not even a custom GPT. This is just really, really, really darn easy. So this says, I have just the free version. I'm not even logged in. Well, you should probably log in, but the free version's fine. And you just start to brand train. So I'm going to show you what this looks like in actual real time. And then I'm going to go through this slide. So this is where, and I just kind of picked on the Opus College of Business. But what I did was I first just said, okay, the first thing that I need to train it on is just what we've done so far. So to train it on the Opus College of Business, I just said, I'm going to pull a bunch of links, right? So I pulled links on the homepage. I pulled links on degrees, the Schultz School, what we were doing in faculty, things prospective students might want to know. So you can see here, I pulled about 7 or 8 web pages. If I was going to do this in earnest, like say you were going to take a day and just say, I'm going to take a day and I'm going to train ChatGPT on my brand, just using this, no custom GPT, I would probably pull your top 25 to 50 best performing web pages. And then I put this prompt. Please begin to learn and understand the Opus College of Business brand, how it's written, their tone, and how they communicate on their website. And then this is something that's actually super, super important. Please confirm after reading and share with me your thoughts and impressions on the Opus College of Business brand. Ask me any questions you have before you begin. So I really do treat this as a conversational approach. And similar to if you were training a new employee, you would say, hey, do you have any questions as you get started? So I ask all of the AIs that as well, right? So it says, thanks for providing the specific pages. Here's what I found. So it gets into brand identity and positioning, tone and communication style a little bit, and then that overall impression, right? And then once they did that, I said, what messages will most resonate with prospective students from out of state? So then they went back to the website and said, all right, here's some things we found, the messages and why it resonates. And then I said, okay, you've looked at it, you've given me some messages. I feel like this is pretty darn good. And then I had it create me a couple pieces of content. I said, hey, can we create an email? Great. And they created an email, and gosh, this email was long, right? And they created a TikTok video. So I said, hey, can you make the email shorter and more interesting? I don't like how cheesy it is. Let me know if you have any questions about how to improve it, right? And then it got shorter, it got sharper, which was great. And then we just kind of have a conversation. The TikTok video started out terrible. So I said, I hate it. It's so bad and the tone is cringe. Redo the entire thing to match a tone that actual 16 to 18-year-olds would like. Do you have any questions? But the bottom line here is that it's just simply creating a dialogue. So pull relevant links from your website, your social media profile, ask ChatGPT to review and begin to understand. Do a second prompt to say specifically look at the visuals or the videos. If you have a YouTube channel, I would upload the link to your YouTube channel, and then get really specific, right? Describe your brand's persona, right? Maybe you have a PDF of brand guidelines to upload, but maybe it's just conversationally, hey, here's some things I want you to know. Then the third thing that I did is I said, okay, overall your impressions are spot on, but here's a couple things that I want you to really know. So I was talking specifically about University of St. Thomas marketing department. So I said, hey, here's a couple things the marketing department does. Did you know that we have a Tommy marketing club? Did you know that our graduates are highly respected, getting great entry-level positions, especially in the Twin Cities? And then I said, please confirm you will understand this and take this into consideration when developing all work going forward, right? Because I'm not just, it's kind of like a new employee, right? I'm not just telling you this just to kind of blow hot air. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand it and consider this when you move forward. So it's just an open dialogue. It's just creating those proof points. It's really just saying, all right, here is our brand on a plate. I want you to learn. I want you to absorb it. I want an open dialogue. What questions do you have? Please confirm you get it. And then test and refine, right? So those assets, like that first email, It was okay. It would have been fine to send out, but we could do better, right? The first TikTok that they were suggesting for prospective students, it was awful. It wasn't something that would work. It just didn't work. And then they got a little bit better. I would argue that they were a little bit better on the email, which kind of makes sense because you think about what the models that they're learning on. And most of the work that they're learning on was written by older adults. So they're probably not as well versed in kind of what, a 15-year-old might be looking for as they're searching for colleges. But this is just your simplest version, right? If we're talking about crawl, walk, run, this is just crawling. You don't need to spend any money. You just need to spend time. And then you just have to test and refine, right? It's not all going to be perfect, and that's okay. So that's kind of step one, just simple training,
Katie?
right? Just what you have. Yep.
Yeah, there was a question in the chat about this specifically, but and some
Yeah.
people did chime in, so thank you for those of you who jumped in. But this one was, I thought, kind of interesting. But if you have like the free version of ChatGPT,
Yep.
would it eventually like forget that conversation that you've
Yep.
had? So you'd have to,
Yep.
kind of
It
restart
can. Yeah,
it.
they
Right?
expire. Yep, they do expire. Yep. So, but what you would have is you would have the work. So they do expire over time, about 30 days, usually 30 to 90 days. But then you'll keep training. So you're absolutely right. The paid version, which I'm going to get to on the next slide. So let's just jump in now. That's $20 a month. So to me, if you were going to say, all right, I'm going to do one tool for this year, and it's something that I think will kind of get my brand further, you have kind of two choices. Number one is Canva Pro. That's $15 a month. And that is if you just want to create a brand kit, which I'm going to show you, and then create lots of different brand assets. So that's a little bit more on kind of that graphic design side. That's terrific. The other one, so 15 times 12. And then the other one is ChatGPT Pro or ChatGPT Plus. And that one is $20 a month. So it's kind of like you kind of have this writer side and then you have the Canvas side. Yeah, Melissa, it's worth every money, worth every penny. Yeah, I personally, if you were going to say, all right, I want to invest in my development for the next year, I want to try to kind of make this work for me and my brand, I would probably invest and do both. And Jasper, which is an amazing tool, which is the last tool I'm going to show, is way more expensive. It's $59 a month. You have to pay for it all up front. So when I did just a quick, hey, how much is it going to cost yesterday? It was with tax, it was $741 for the whole year. So compared to $741, these two tools combined, that would be my recommendation if you were just going to use two. But great question. Yeah, and love everybody kind of chiming in and helping one another. That's absolutely what this session is supposed to be about. So that's kind of the first one, right? Lowest hanging fruit. This is crawl, right? The next one is like you're kind of crawling, but you're starting to be ready to walk, right? So this is a custom GPT for our brand. So you'll need ChatGPT Plus, like I said, $20 a month. And I'm just going to show you what this looks like. And this is a sample. I do want to say one thing before I start in this custom GPT. Anyone can use a custom GPT, but only one person can own and edit that custom GPT. So if you were going to create a custom GPT of brand guidelines for your company, you're going to want to think, who's that one person that should own it? I know that's a super annoying thing, but it is just kind of the way of the world right now. So this is, I'm going to go up here. I'm actually going to go all the way up. You can tell I've got a lot of chats here. And I'm going to say GPTs, explore GPTs, and I just want to create one. So this is how you would create it. And you can actually say create, and you can say, I want to build brand guidelines to use for my small chiropractic business. And then it will start to help you build this. And I'm going to show you, this takes a little bit of time to kind of figure out. So I want to show you what this looks like. So I created a brand guideline for Healthy Day Chiropractic, which is the name of my small business. And I said, and I gave it just a whole bunch of instructions, right? So like I said, I don't have brand guidelines like in a PDF the way that a large company would, but I have colors, I have a logo, you can upload all your files, you could upload different images. And so I said, where possible, incorporate our motto, a healthy life begins with a healthy day. Reference our website and Facebook page to better understand our brand tone of voice. Here you could put in all the different web pages or social media presences that were the best for you. Always ask for additional information about the topic before starting. something. This to me is really important because it'll just, it's so eager to please, it'll just start working right away. I want it to take a breath. When I give that first prompt, I want it to come back and say, okay, what is the topic of the day, right? And then you can see here, there's just a lot more about, avoiding medical jargon, cold clinical tones, overly formal language, user colors and logos. There's just so much stuff here, right? Visual guide prioritizes bright, vibrant aesthetics, healthy images featuring healthy, active, and diverse individuals, right? Optimistic tone. So the more that you put into this setup when you start to create it, the better off you will be. And I'll just say, yep, that works great. Just so that you can see how it starts to kind of build this out. So this will take some time. You think about what are those kind of must-haves for my brand and how do I want to pull them into that? And then this is kind of your final output, right? And you can edit this at any time. And then you can see here, I have 3 conversation starters. Write a brand story with a warm, optimistic tone, write an email with a warm, optimistic tone, write a Facebook post with a warm, optimistic tone. So I just used this earlier today and I said, hey, I want to write a Facebook post with a warm, optimistic tone. And since I said, always ask me the topic before you get started, I'd be happy to help. Can you tell me a little bit more about the topic, right? So I said, hey, I'm doing a special for existing patients. Sounds great. I uploaded the logo, which, as you know, is also in that brand library. And then they said, here's an optimistic Facebook post. Truthfully, I think this is a lot of copy. So I would probably work to reduce that. And then they said, do you want one for Instagram? And I said, yep, please create one for Instagram. Again, this might be too much copy, so I'd probably want to refine it. But I really do think that this layout was pretty good, right? Refer a friend. I know this logo gets a little bit squishy. It definitely has kind of that AI look to it, but it has our brand colors. Refer a friend, get a free adjustment. A healthy life begins with a healthy day, which is our motto. So I think overall, I would give it like a BB plus. And the truth is, as a sole proprietor, my husband does the chiropractic side, I do the marketing and business side. I would probably just put this out there, right? I'd probably iterate it maybe 2 or 3 more times to get it to be pretty darn good. And then I'd say, you know what? Pretty darn good is good enough. So that is what it looks like in real time in practice. And then this is what those steps are. So access that ChatGPT Plus, navigate to click explore, and then create, right? So define your brand voice, be very specific, upload your brand guidelines in what's called that knowledge section, upload the brand guidelines, voice documentation, your best performing content, set behavioral instructions, right? So topics to avoid, preferred terminology, how to handle different content types, and then test and refine. So you can see here, that was an Instagram post that I showed, and then this was an email, right? So hello, as summer winds down, we're here to help you. Healthy life begins with a healthy day. Schedule a physical now. Even that CTA button is in our brand colors. And then this offers you then, when you talk about code, it said, do you want all of this into an HTML code that you can then import into MailChimp? And I said, yep. I said, create that for MailChimp. And then I can just copy paste this, put this directly into MailChimp, and then send it out. I always send a test email to myself just to make sure that it looks okay. But this is pretty darn easy. So that's the kind of the second tool, is creating that custom GPT for the brand. So you just create your brand guidelines. Again, we only have an hour today, so I could go into this very in depth, but this would be the steps that you would follow, right? And then it's just a bunch of test and refine. I know test and refine might feel like a really annoying thing to keep saying, but it really is just test and refine, right? Create this, and maybe you say, you know what, it's too serious, right? Or it's too robotic, or make it warmer, or, oh, I want you to incorporate more of a vibrant color palette, right? Or whatever that is. So again, this is obviously not a real image. They just created this, but I think it works out okay for back to school. So any questions on that piece? Okay, and I want to, yes.
Yeah, it looks like someone just asked, could you show how you get to the creating a custom
Yep.
GPT section?
Yep. Let me go back. So this is if you have ChatGPT Plus, you just click over here on this thing called GPTs, and it'll bring you up to this tool, which is Explore GPTs. And that's actually how I found that GPT for brand tone of voice. But then you just go up here to this right-hand corner and you just say create. And then there's 2 ways that you can create it. You can configure it yourself. So if you're just thinking, you know what, I know what I want. I'm going to upload my knowledge. I'm going to upload these conversation starters, which those conversation starters are these little blocks of boxes here that you click on. Maybe you're just like, you know what, I know it. I've got this and I know exactly what I need to put. That's great if you're in that boat. If you're a little bit more like, I've never created one of these, I want a little bit of help, then you'll want to click create, and then you can co-create those brand guidelines together. And then what you put in this box then automatically flows into this configure box. And they'll even populate some suggested conversation starters. Candidly, I found those to be a little bit off base. It was more focused on kind of create brand guidelines as opposed to creating them and then actually doing something with them. But that would be your option. So it's kind of a lot of trial and error, but really you just start over here. As long as you're logged in, you'll be able to click on this GPTs and then click on create. And then I saw the question about, do you have to worry about copyright infringement for generated photos and music? That is a great question, Anna. So I said that I worked on this at US Bank. We used a generative AI, we used AI for a tool to work on our brand campaign. However, in that instance, we actually shot and photographed everything that we used. So we did not use any AI generated images. That's because as a very large company, there's just so many questions about Getty images and iStock images and copyright and intellectual property. And as a large business, I probably would not really feel that comfortable using those images, right? Because they probably found them somewhere. And there's definitely questions. Now, as a small business, it's just simply, I don't really think that, I don't think that they're going to kind of notice, or I'm not really high profile enough. But it is fair. So there's two sides to this copyright coin. One, anything created with an AI tool, according to the US Copyright and Patent Office, is not able to be intellectual property. So I know that there was an AI and legal session a few weeks back. So if you create something on AI, like say that I created something I was really, really proud of, can't copyright it, can't own it, somebody else can use it. It's just there is no intellectual property rights. And then vice versa, if somebody's stuff got taken that was real, they would have recourse to definitely kind of sue. And that's a very, very valid question. So I think it's one, what is your team's appetite for risk? The US Bank was not going to take risks of doing AI content in 2024. Things obviously are quickly evolving. But also there are really real questions. And like I said, if you're really proud of it, you can't copyright it either. And then to answer Melissa's question, have you started to use the 5.0 agent feature? I haven't. I know that just rolled out in the last month. So if anybody has, please let me know and type that into the chat as well. Like I said, these ChatGPT is always changing. They just rolled out a student tool last week. And then Nick, does the IP rule regarding items creating with Canva? No, Nick, this is across the board. So this is an issue that actually really fascinates me. So there is no global standard for AI usage or intellectual property. There's no national standard. And there was a chance that California passed an AI standard, but Gavin Newsom, the governor, actually vetoed it. So right now there's no IP rules whatsoever in any regard. And that sounds like a really flippant blanket statement to say like, oh, there are no guardrails. But truthfully, countries and states cannot agree on them. So there's no guardrails. So it is definitely very, very risky. And that's why I think when you're really training with your brand, I think is a lot safer, and then uploading your brand library. So ideally, if you are a business of, not just like two people, you would have an image library that would be your own images, and then those are what you would use in your posts, as opposed to creating brand images not in your posts, or images using AI that you don't own. Great question. Okay, let's dive into the next one. So we talked about creating that custom GPT for a brand. And then the next one is just a Canva brand kit. And this is one that it's a little bit AI, but it's also just a little bit of, gosh, it's just easy, right? So Canva, again, this is the Pro account. So you'll need Canva Pro, so $15 per month. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So we have a brand kit of assets. You can create brand templates. And there's kind of like AI light with this is what I would call it. So this is on Canva. You can click on brand, and then you can add a new brand kit. So I'm just going to click on that. We'll just say test create, just so you can see where you would go. And then what you'll do is you'll add your logo or logos, right? If you have multiple brands. So giant companies that have a lot of sub brands, you can upload all of these into your You'll use your colors. You'll set up your different fonts. This really is my favorite one. You'll add your brand voice, and you can even sort of just type it if you don't have a specific brand voice, right? So write guidelines describing your brand voice in 500 characters, right? Which is kind of a challenge for those of us that are a little bit of a chatter. Add up photos, right? Add up graphics, add up icons, and away you go, right? So easy peasy. So for me, my brand kit is really darn simple. So I just have a logo. We only have 4 colors, and then I don't really have. I just sort of keep it simple, right? Our brand voice is professional, warming, caring, and encouraging. We focus on helping people live healthier lives through superior chiropractic care. And again, I apologize that all this is chiropractic focused. I just wanted to use a brand that I knew I could share and not get in trouble. And then I just have a picture of my partner who's the doctor, just because it's, but in a different light, you would have a lot of photos here. Right now, obviously we don't have pictures of our patients, etc. But this is just a really simple brand kit. So that is step 1 here, right? Access the brand, upload those brand logos, set your brand colors, choose your fonts. That's steps kind of 1, 2, 3, and 4 here, right? Super easy. And then you can create brand templates. And what I love about the brand templates is with these, you're saying, okay, I know what I'm going to use over and over and over again, right? So I want to look for, here's one that I did yesterday that was just like, all right, we're closed, right? Say that we're going on vacation. I'm going to say, sorry, we're closed. See you again next week. And then I can just use this template and then update it, right? Sorry, we're closed from August 10th to August 12th, right? See you next week, right? Whatever that is. So here's one that I was working on earlier this morning. Let me see if I can pull this one up. I just said, okay, I want to do a refer a friend. So I just went in and selected this template. So I said, okay, use 4 words to describe what you want. I just put refer a friend. And then I can start to populate it with my brand and actually make it look like my own, right? So color palette, say I want to make it green, right? And then I say, okay, I'm going to make my logo. And you can start to just move all of these things around. So obviously I would replace this, etc. Take out these images so that I want to throw him in. Now, obviously this takes a little bit of finessing, right? And a little bit of graphic design, but then I can just publish this as a brand template. So every time I want to do a refer a friend and get a discount campaign, I have this template all up. Right. So I know for some of you, you're very familiar with this. This has been a tool that's been around for a couple of years now. I know a lot of my students use this, but this is one that's just easy, right? Especially if you're not a graphic design artist. This is a great tool to use as well. So that's your brand kit. Any questions on the brand kit? And I'm going to go back to the chat really quickly. Okay. And then last but not least, I do want to jump into Jasper. So I'm going to actually pull this up. So Jasper is really sophisticated. So it's kind of like you get what you pay for. Well, with Jasper, you're going to upload a whole lot of stuff before you start working. So individual seat, like I said, is $59 per month, but there's a whole lot that you're going to do before you create content, right? So configure your brand voice, and I'm going to show you just how many elements there are for that. So I see maybe another chat. What was the pro tip for the brand kit slide? Oh, I saw that was cut off. That was so odd in the presentation. Let me go back. You can create multiple brand kits for the sub brands. Yeah, making it easy to switch between those brand identities. Yeah, thank you so much for flagging that. So with Jasper, before you're going to start actually doing anything, this is this project tab. So this is, I'll go back out here. So this is the kind of the home page. But before you're going to start to work on any of this, you're actually going to click in here and build out all of this. So brand voice, audience, knowledge base, style guide, visual guidelines. So you can see where the other ones are a little squishy, like ChatGPT has just kind of like a knowledge center. This is very specific. So for brand voice, I only paid for a couple, right? I just had but I created one for patients, right? And you can see here that it's very detailed. So I created all of this, right? What am I trying to say here? What are the excerpts? So I uploaded different pages from our website, and I said, hey, I want you to look at all of this. And then I previewed this brand voice. So there's a lot that goes into each different brand voice, and you can upload a couple different brand voices. And then they also created a sample voice as well. So this is your brand voice. Then you're going to upload your audiences. So I created a specific audience for new patients, and this was really, really well done. So I started to edit this audience, and I just want to show you all the different things that I did. So I just did a general summary, right? New patients who may be feeling nervous about visiting a chiropractor. What else do I want to say? And then they actually came up with all these different buying triggers, right? What are the reasons that they may come here? What are their use case requirements? What are their key success indicators? What are their additional characteristics? So I kind of got the ball rolling by creating this audience description. You can see it's less than 500 characters. And then from that, Jasper then gave me a whole lot of other things to discover or to think about. And then all of these areas are editable, right? So maybe I say, you know what, really my key patient base is 40 to 65, right? Or all of that. And then I offered some positioning statement. They helped me refine that. And then you can see here, value prop, personalized care, cost transparency, proven results, right? So all of this came from a partnership as we built out this audience together. And so really what you get is, I really like the do's and the don'ts, but this is why I consider this a gold standard, right? It's the most expensive, but it's also by far the most comprehensive. When you look at this audience overview, gosh, there is just a lot here, right? There's way more here that they're asking you about rather than ChatGPT, which is just kind of like, hey, I'll train you, I'll work with you, you can create an agent or a custom GPT, but the bottom line is we're not going in as in-depth. So that's the audience. Then you're going to have a knowledge base, right? So you can see here, you would upload things like your guidelines, your website, etc., right? Anything that you might want them to reference. Style guide. I didn't do this because I don't have a style guide, but you could upload one if you had one. And then lastly, those visual guidelines, right? And this one, I actually did get this URL issue, so I was going to email them about that because they're a pretty darn expensive company. And so then I started to create a project, right? So create project, and it's going to take all of that. So name your project. Let's see, refer a patient. But then you can see when you build this out, I created a tone of voice, which was patients. I created an audience, which was new patients. And then I can upload things if I want. And then I'm going to say, okay, with all of that, I want to create an email campaign, right? So it's plugging in the patients and the new patients. So it'll say, okay, I'm specifically targeting those new patients. I'm specifically using the patient's tone of voice. Now, obviously, for a business, you might have, you know, more than 5 audiences, and that's where they have those custom sales packages. So if you were a large company, you would want to put in much more than just this. And then you just start to create. Now, I know that we only have 15 minutes left, so I'm not actually going to go through all of that. But this is what I worked on with them. So you can see here, this was the top 5 reasons that it's the best. I worked on a lot of this, but what I really, really liked about this was actually I started to iterate on this. And what I did is then I actually started to optimize it for generative search optimization. So we worked on all of that together. So let me just pop this up here. So this was just an ongoing conversation. You can edit it yourself. You can make comments and share it with your team, or you can, as you edit it. So I added in a whole bunch of reviews from ChatGPT, or excuse me, from Google reviews. I said, okay, we've got kind of some things up here that are okay, but I think it's better if other people hear testimonials from patients. So I went out here and said, hey, I uploaded our Google reviews. I said, please review those and add in testimonials from other patients. And then it did that as well, right? So overall, I got a pretty darn good blog post. Again, I would call it the 80-20 rule, where in the end, it said, okay, yeah, I can work with this, right? I can iterate this myself. So any questions on kind of Jasper and how you work on this?
I would say a few.
Yeah, let's go back.
A few questions from the Q&A. One on Jasper specifically was the cost. You mentioned it was pricey, but
it is.
That was a question
for a year. So it was really interesting. So the other 2 tools that I showed, ChatGPT and Canva, allow you to pay per month. If you are an individual user on Jasper, you have to pay upfront for the full year, and it's $741. So it said $59 a month, so I did the math. That's like $720, but then there was also taxes. So you can do a 7-day trial. Now, most mid-sized companies now that are using this in the Twin Cities do consider that worth it. So obviously Jasper is used by most of like the larger companies that are doing content creation in the Twin Cities that I know of. But it's also used, I've heard of many kind of mid-sized companies where they're like, you know what, for a couple seats, for that cost, for the amount of time that we save, for the brand training that we've gotten, it is worth it for our team. Right now, if you're, an educator or a nonprofit person, that may not be in your budget. Good question. What other questions came in?
Another one that came in was also, do you know if Microsoft Copilot has a feature similar to this?
That's a good question. From what I've been hearing, I don't know that they have a tool just like this, but from what I've been hearing, their tools are not as sophisticated. I was just talking to somebody yesterday who does use Jasper, and they said, when I work on stuff with Microsoft Copilot, when I've tried to create documents, it's just not as good. So I don't have a personal, stake in either company, but that's not what I've heard. Yeah, so that's a good question. I don't think that they have something like this. Yeah, I agree. Copilot has the capability for creating agents. I've not heard somebody use those agents to effectively create content at scale the way I've heard of with Jasper or ChatGPT. But if somebody has had that experience, please put that in the chat, because I'm not here to say that it's not possible. I've just heard that it's a little bit more frustrating, a little bit more clunky, which it kind of makes sense because Microsoft hasn't had to evolve quite as much. And then Erica, yes, Gemini does have some of the similar capabilities to ChatGPT and certainly Jasper, definitely lower cost. So I did not dive into that tool today, but I'd be happy to have an offline conversation and kind of dive into Gemini as well. Great question.
A question from the Q&A. Does Jasper offer graphic design based on the content you entered?
Yeah.
This particular person has used paid Canva and paid ChatGPT, but the images and graphics haven't been as accurate.
Yep. And then I'll say, let's see here, suggest some images can use for this post. So they'll give you some images, but in typical, you might want to kind of look at these and be like, okay, like relaxation and wellness, a serene image of someone relaxing, local shore view scenery, like that just doesn't feel quite right? But this one, create an image of Dr. Jones helping a patient. We'll create that. And then ideally, they would refer back. Ideally, you would have uploaded those images, some images into that first section, and then they could refer back to those. I know that's always the awkward thing when you're doing this on Zoom, because it takes a little while to think. But yeah, I mean, as far as a generic image goes, that image is fine, right? Is it great? No. Is it fine? Yeah, it's fine. It clearly looks like a legit office, right? There's a spine, there's a table. It looks fine, right? So it is where I think, if you taking a brand library of images is always going to be the top tier, right? But I would argue that a lot of these, if you disregard the copyright and intellectual property question, which as a large company I probably would not recommend, this is fine. Right? It gets the job done, throw it up there. And again, a lot of it is just A/B testing. And the other thing I'll say really quickly about Jasper is the best way to approach Jasper is to A/B test Jasper content and human written content and see what works better. And if your human performing content is performing quite a bit better than your Jasper created content, in the medium term, you should be uploading all of those top performing human articles. And when we go back out to this space, where we're trying to get to the IQ and training this, especially this knowledge base, you should be uploading all of that better content. right? So as you're getting files, as you're getting URLs that are performing better than what Jasper is doing, you should be continually training that model, right? It's kind of like ABT, always be training, because over time, Jasper should be able to start to perform somewhat similarly to your human writers. However, it can easily take 3 to 6 to 9 months for Jasper to really get to that level. If you're expecting I'm going to use this tool and it's going to perform better than a human writer right away, I have not heard of any use cases or even my own use cases where that was the case. Not to be all, oh, it won't work at all. And then Monica, can you explain again how the IP issues? Monica, they do not impact them differently. It is just the appetite for risk can be different, right? So as I'm a small business owner with a very small marketing budget, part of which I'm going to be putting at this point still into paid search, for me, I will accept that risk, right? If I was a very large, if I was on the New York Stock Exchange, for example, scale of company, I probably would not just willy-nilly use images. I would create a brand library of images that I had either taken myself or had paid for on places like iStock and Getty. I would upload those and I would use those so that if somebody came to me and said, hey, we have an intellectual property question, I can point and say, I took all of these images myself. Here's the photographer. Here's the invoice. Here's the individual files. Or here is the invoice for the iStock code for each individual image, or the Getty code. So it's not that it's different. It's just a level of risk. And then Nick, do you have any thoughts on how HubSpot would function compared to Jasper? Nick, that's a great question. I think that HubSpot has been a leader for a long time. And I think that Jasper came out of the gate maybe better and a little bit stronger. And I think that HubSpot's Breeze, which I've been looking into but haven't used, is potentially going to be their biggest challenger. Right now, I think Jasper is out front, but HubSpot has a lot more integrations and a lot more plug and play with all these different things. And I think that HubSpot's integrations in the long term, and the fact that HubSpot has been a long-term vendor of a lot of companies and companies have a lot of faith in them, it will not surprise me if by 2026 or 2027, HubSpot is either, the gold or the silver medalist. I think those two are kind of the ones to really watch in the race. ChatGPT is not going to evolve as quickly just because they don't need to be quite as innovative right now, right? Look at the number of people using them. People are using them anyways. Any other questions there? Okay, and then I just want to go really quickly, just an implementation, right? So kind of in summary, if you're going to implement this, just a couple of things, right? Document that brand voice, create what that is first, right? Create training examples, curate them. This is really the most important thing. The brand voice is critical, but creating those high quality content pieces that perfectly embody your brand voice to use as training examples is really kind of that 1-2 punch, right? If you have a brand voice, but you haven't uploaded quite a substantial library of high performing content, it's not going to learn your brand as well. And then always remove them, right? So as you have better pieces of content, new pieces of content, upload those as well. Set up those guardrails, including human checks, establish also automated quality checks, test and refine, right? Right now, AI content compared to human written content, identify those opportunities. And then also just scale gradually, right? I know we all say Rome wasn't built in a day, but the reality is that I would start with those low risk content types, right? I would start with a blog post, a Facebook post, create an email, right? I wouldn't probably publish your whole annual report using ChatGPT, for example. Scale gradually, right? Get quick wins, fail fast, and then go forward. And then lastly, just want to say, thanks for your time. AI brand training does take time. It's just like training a new employee. Start small, scale gradually. And then I just wanted to also say, let's keep this conversation going. So please connect with me. I do generative AI consulting, trainings to organizations. I also do things like prompt engineering trainings, etc. St. Thomas Executive Education has a ton of really fabulous custom programs. So if this is something that really interests you, please reach out. And then are there any questions as we wrap? Or Lindsay, anything that you wanna chime in with?
Yeah, I know it'll take a minute. Yeah, just wanted to thank everyone for coming today. We do have related programs here. I just put them up just to kind of share this right at the end, but we have Digital Marketing Fundamentals that begins September 22nd. I mentioned the Certified Digital Marketing professional program. And then we also have AI for professionals, and then using ChatGPT with Excel. So all related to the content that we talked about today. Both of the digital marketing programs will dive into this a bit. So that's something, if you want to kind of learn more and dig deeper into this, those might be some options. AI for professionals is really geared towards kind of the initial, like learning how to prompt and just kind of learning the basics of AI use. And then obviously ChatGPT with Excel is specifically related to how to use that with Excel. But yeah, that's all we have for today. But thank you, Katie, and appreciate everyone hopping on.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for your time. And, there's just a lot of trial and error. So that's the last thing I'll say is with this, just try it, have fun with it, try new tools, see what works for you, see what doesn't work for you. Don't be afraid to fail fast. It doesn't have to be perfect. So thanks so much. And if there's anything I can do or any questions you have afterwards, I know that the 60 minutes flew by super fast. So anything that didn't get answered, just send me a LinkedIn DM and we can connect. But yeah, thanks so much, everybody. And I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday.